Hello, hello, everyone. We are slicing and dicing and chopping it up on December 8th. So today, Gavin and I are going to be talking about an event that's gone on in South Korea over the last week or so. And it is very subject to change. A lot of stuff has changed in the last week. A week ago, nobody ever imagined this was going to happen, but sure enough, it did. And we're just going to throw out the disclaimer right now that things that we are saying will probably change within the time that we finish recording this, even though it's going to be just a few minutes, and then probably in the next couple of days when we post it. So check other sources as well to make sure that you get the full picture of what's going on in South Korea. So basically, South Korea's president declared martial law on Tuesday night for a span of 6 hours at the request of his defense minister. And that was not a good decision. It was the first time since 1980 that the South Korean government has declared martial law. And back when Korea had a military dictatorship, they used martial law several times to basically push protesters away and to jail them and to basically keep control over the government when it looked like the country was actually falling apart. And there were real North Korean forces potentially at play. This time, old Yoon was just the boy who cried wolf and said, "Oh, there are North Korean forces at play, and we need to declare martial law." And basically, it was not a good decision. I've already talked about this, but he essentially canceled himself. He was at about 38% in terms of having support from Koreans. Now he's at about 12, and he's basically turned himself into a lame duck with no legs and basically no brain. So, Gavin, do you have anything else to add to this really quickly, and then we can go back and forth and start talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is how not to do a coup d'etat. This is absolutely an example of a coup d'etat, a takeover of the government. It's a particular kind of coup d'etat. It's a self coup, and they've had several of these throughout Korean history, particularly from 1963 to 1989. There were a number of self coups from military and civilian dictators that wanted to entrench power. And it definitely seems like, particularly the defense minister, who has since been arrested and is now in prison, um, it seems like he particularly thought that this would be sort of nostalgic for some people in the South Korean political realm. And it was, but in a very negative way. Uh, they're not, it turns out there are people who didn't mind things about the military dictatorship, but they're not going to go out and overthrow the elected representative government in the form of the House of Representatives. They're just not going to do that. So, yeah, it was just poorly executed from the start to the finish. I found out about it Tuesday night, my time, and it was just it was kind of wild. They just fumbled it from the start. The military, the command seemed to be on board, but command and control of the troops on the ground was not very good. They
Mm-hmm.
tried to get into Parliament. They tried to close off Parliament to the representatives trying to get in. They could not. The head of the opposition actually live streamed himself climbing over a fence and walking into Parliament. If you were doing your job properly, that wouldn't have happened. And they neglected to deal with the fact that in South Korean law, you can declare martial law if you're the president, but it can be rescinded by parliament if you have a majority.
Mm-hmm.
All the opposition
It's
parties
200.
showed
It's
up.
200, right?
Yeah, it's 200. It's two-thirds. Uh, and they're 300, I believe, in the Korean.
Mm-hmm.
It's a unicameral situation. Uh, so you had 190 parliamentarians show up, but the ruling party did not show up. And the other problem this guy had, the other problem Yoon had, sorry, is that immediately the head of his own party completely disavowed this, said he didn't consult us, we don't approve of this, really bad idea. So even though the party didn't show up, they didn't need to. And those 190 members that were there officially rescinded martial law, and Yoon conceded it had been a mistake. It
Hmm.
lasted 6 hours. This whole thing was a joke.
Yeah. And he basically did this too. It seemed like this was almost a spur of the moment decision from his
Mm,
defense minister. And none of
yeah.
this was planned out well. None of this was well organized or executed because what I saw in some of the Korean news websites was that the soldiers who were actually there did not even have any sort of weapons. They didn't have like actual bullets to be able to take over the parliament, which is, in my opinion, very, very good because you don't want to have a bunch of armed Korean soldiers running around parliament at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning
No,
when
no.
when the president is declaring martial law for no reason.
Yeah.
This is a complete boneheaded move, and I saw that I think Boston canceled his trip to South Korea. He was going to go this week or next week, and the
Mm,
Bank of Korea basically has reshored up the whole entire economy and the currency. And you go back to like 1997, 1998, when the Asia financial crisis happened, Korea's currency lost a huge amount of value. It lost, I think, close to 50 to 60%, if I can remember correctly, but it decimated the economy in Korea. And
mm,
there was fears that this would do exactly the same thing, but the finance ministry in Korea was basically ready to go. And they said, okay, we're going to shore up the currency, we're going to shore up the banking system to basically instill trust in the Korean economy because we don't want the whole entire country to fall apart economically. The economy in Korea is not good as it is. And having something like this is just one of the worst decisions that you could do that just further erodes consumer confidence in the country and confidence from other countries that are trying to invest and do business with Korea.
yeah, and
It's
as someone who's, I mean, you've spent way more time in Korea than I have. You've lived there, but we both spend a lot of time in Korea. We both spend a lot of time with Koreans. This is just not a culture where, some countries, there's a lot of nostalgia for military dictatorship.
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to name names, but they exist. There's some countries where there's more of a hearkening back than others. Korea does not have that really. Um,
No, it's not I would say it's virtually non-existent. There's maybe a handful
a
of people that are still
Yeah,
alive,
a
but you
really
hit the nail on
small
the head, Gavin.
minority, a really small minority of people, and it's just not. Again, you really have to think, what was the defense minister thinking? It does seem, it really seems like a spitball move where you're going in the middle of the night, you're going, I'm about to be indicted. Um, I can't pass any legislation. What can I do? Well, let's declare martial law and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which,
How many
boy,
bottles of soju would you have to drink to come up with this idea?
I'm kind
I
of a
mean,
lightweight these days, but a lot,
I mean, it's just
a,
well,
a lot.
One beer Dave would have never thought of this. Let me just say that.
No, no. This is like 4 bottles of soju, Gavin. And 4 bottles of soju, Gavin's game for pretty much anything. I'm not sure he'd be game for this. This is you've crossed the Rubicon. And you're
Hmm.
absolutely right. He's not being arrested right now. He will probably stay on, at least in the short term, but he is going to have zero political authority. And
Hmm.
I think the only reason he has not been impeached already is because his party does not want to lose the next election. And they're
Well, they don't
aware,
want to go the way of Park Geun-hye's party. So if you remember
yeah,
2016, the former president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, not Moon Jae-in, the president before him. She was outed for basically using a friend in corruption and a poor response to the Sewol ferry disaster. And there's a whole laundry list of things. But
Shamanism,
Koreans basically,
very odd.
yeah, yes, Koreans basically went into Seoul and they had huge candlelight vigils to basically get her out. And eventually she was swept out of power. And when she was swept out of power, her whole entire political party died. Yoon's party, the PPP, is a very new party. It's been around for less than, I think, probably 7 or 8 years, if I can remember correctly. Not very long.
Well, I
And
mean,
this
correct me.
party would be toast as well. If Yoon is swept out of office, his party's looking at this like we want to do damage control and we don't want to have
Yeah.
to start a brand new political party from scratch again.
Well, I mean, so one of the things for listeners who might not be familiar with this, uh, South Korea has basically a two dominant party system. There's a party that's right to center right, and then there's a party on the center left. It's kind of similar to America in some ways, but also not. So these parties are both very new, um, in the sense that the formal parties themselves kind of change their name and structure about once every 10 years. So the personnel are more or less the same, the ideological currents are more or less the same, but the actual names of the parties change. Again, once about every 10 years. So the current, I think it's People's Power Party. That's Yoon's
Yeah.
party.
Yeah. Cook Mini him. Yeah. People's Party.
Yeah,
People's Power Party.
they are 100% the successor party to Park Geun-hye's party.
Hmm.
Um, but every time there's a major political scandal, this happens on the left as well. Every time there's a political scandal, they fire some people at the top and rebrand.
Yep.
And that this means, from an outside perspective, South Korean politics can sometimes be confusing because you're like, they're just all these new parties. Well, not really. They're basically the same party, but they changed your name quite a bit. So
Hmm.
they really, again, want to avoid that because they've just built up the brand. They're just back at basically where they were before Park Geun-hye went away. And now this happens, and they're basically a bunch of people in Seoul going, well, yeah, we're on triage. We're on damage control. We need to put a tourniquet on this and move on now. And I
Hmm.
think that's what they're trying to do. Now, whether or not they're successful, I think is a completely different story. And a lot of it has to do with how cooperative Yoon is. A lot of it has to do with how lucky the opposition party feels.
Hmm. And this is maybe a little bit of a rabbit hole that I'm gonna go down, but
Good.
just thinking here
Love it.
for a second. So South Korea is very, very divided politically, very similar to the US, where you have people on the right, people on the left that don't agree with each other, and politics is becoming front and center to a lot of people actually having friendships and building relationships with people. So you could look at this and go, okay, Yoon is trying to unify the country by bringing them together to fight against North Korea. And in a way, he's bringing the people together basically to throw his ass out of being president. So if that's his goal, then I guess yeah, he's doing the right thing. But what the hell are you thinking, man? This is crazy. The country is going to be polarized, and it's going to continue to be polarized long after something like this happens. And the country does have social problems that it needs to fix. And I'm not going to get into that here, but it
Martial
really
law is
is.
not the
This
way to
is
go.
martial law is not going to fix South Korea's social problems. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Anyways, on that note, it's been great over here slicing and dicing and chopping it up with you, Dave. Hope you have a good one.
Likewise.
See you
Yeah,
next
thank
week.
you. Yeah, take it easy.